Welcome back to Archaeology After Dark, everyone. I am, of course, your host, Daniel Rhodes. My guests today are Julia Berg and Sarah Mason. Thank you both for joining me.
Thanks so much for having us, Daniel.
We're really excited to be here.
I'm
So,
Julia Berg,
yeah, I
and
was going to say,
sorry.
I was going to say, Julia, since you got here first, you go ahead.
Yeah. I've been a teacher for 15 years now in Maryland and got involved with archaeology back in 2019, along with Sarah, just going and volunteering on digs. And we accidentally archaeologied so hard that we built a business out of it.
Yeah, I'm Sarah Mason, and I've been a teacher for pushing 15 years now, like a public school middle school teacher. I teach history, and I've always loved the content. I love the kids, I love the content, and I love teaching. And Julia and I met because we worked at the same school, and we became instant best friends and instant adventure partners. And like she said, we kind of like tumbled into archaeology. It was certainly a high on the bucket list thing that we wanted to do. I wanted to be an archaeologist as a kid, and I couldn't ever wrap my brain around the idea of actually following that dream. So I went down the path that I saw reflected more frequently, which was becoming a teacher. But the passion never left, and so we dived into the world of archaeology, and we just kept showing up, and we didn't look back. And now here we are. We own a business related to the mission of supporting it in public education.
And that's what we're actually talking about today. Um, this is one of my cornerstones for this program is how to make archaeology more available to the public. Like not everywhere can do a public archaeology program. Not everywhere has the resources to do a public archaeology program. And those are two things that I think are crucial to actually providing archaeology to the community. But then also, I really like the phrasing accidentally archaeology. Thank you so much for saying.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
our catchphrase.
kind of a long running joke that we have.
My God, I'm going to get that put on a shirt at some point.
Well, we observed a need in the archaeology community of this concern that our history wasn't being preserved, respected, and acknowledged collectively in the community. And we were like, we can solve that. And we, as teachers, we can solve that because we have access to the youngest members of the community. And so we can be the mouthpiece that helps to change the culture by bringing archaeology into the classroom.
And this
And
is
truly
something,
that, all
uh,
right, go ahead.
this is something that a lot of people in archaeology find really frustrating, especially because, they don't know how to communicate it to the public, or they are finding that the public, doesn't have the interest or isn't listening to them when it's something that's really important. And if we don't preserve the history, it's gone. Like the people who made it aren't around anymore. You can't just go remake a narrative of history. If something disappears and it's gone. Poof.
Exactly. And really this problem is multifaceted too, because teachers have that problem on the flip side as well. Their materials are not exciting and engaging and reflective of the history that's actually being uncovered. And students, when they are sitting in a history class learning it, they are disconnected, right? Like history doesn't feel local or lived to them, because they're just learning about something in a textbook, and the teachers don't have the resources to really engage the students and make them feel the presence of history. And so we kind of saw the problem from both ends because we had a foot in both worlds. We were teachers, but then we also started getting involved with archaeology. We saw that archaeologists want to get their work into schools, and the teachers are missing that exciting history that archaeologists are actually doing. And so that's kind of where we come in, bringing those two groups together.
So, how did you go about solving the problem, or at least taking steps in the right direction? And this is just from my experience. The problems in education are always there. They just have different solutions, and it's just steps in the right direction.
The institution of education is a well-meaning one, but it certainly has struggles, like most institutions, I think, at this point in time in our history. So with that in mind, we understand the climate of the classroom, we understand the climate and the needs of teachers, especially in our home state of Maryland, right? We understand our contracts, we understand the laws, we understand how to keep our credentials active. We know what teachers need and we know what they're looking for to improve their teaching and to retain their licensure. And so we partnered with Dr. Kat Sterner from Towson University. She was recommended a recommended contact through the Maryland Historic Trust, and we worked with her to develop a week-long teacher workshop where teachers learned about archaeology from start to finish. So that means like, what do we do before we open up the ground, talking to the descendant communities, above ground radar and GPR, and then how items and spaces are interpreted, again, with the descendant community, and how items are maintained in the lab and in perpetuity, and what the laws and the ethics are around it. So this entire week, the really robust week, but intentionally, the way that Julie and I wanted to learn archaeology that we've kind of pieced together over the years. And we offered teachers an incentive, which is continuing professional development credits. And they chomped at the bit. We are very fortunate. They came in high numbers last year, and they're back in much higher numbers this year. They're looking forward to it because it's a unique experience to actually go into the field and work with the artifacts and talk to the descendant community, and be part of the activity of preserving our past.
And it's a lifelong activity. No one ever actually stops preserving history. We have to continuously do it, or like I said, it disappears. And luckily, that means no shortage of work for people like me.
That's true.
So, how do you go about introducing children to archaeology? I know, so this is the double-edged sword of archaeology. When people first get introduced to it, they have a very like rigid perception of what it is. Like when I go and actually give presentations on archaeology, they're actually surprised I'm not an old white dude. Am I a white dude? Yes. But I'm certainly, I like to think I look good for my age. So how do you
It
go about getting students out of that rigid perception?
what's awesome about teachers is that they know their content and they know their students really, really well. And teachers have the ability to see the connections between other disciplines, other subjects, and what they have to teach in their classroom, right? We have a pretty rigid set of standards that we have to cover based on our state mandates. And but teachers are able to see connections that can enhance the state mandated curriculum, that can fit into those objectives. And that's really what we would like to lean on, right? Teachers are the experts. And they can find those connections if you invite them into archaeological spaces and let them learn from you. So that's really what our model is that we bring teachers in, get them to participate in archaeology, have these hands-on experiences, learn about archaeology from the experts, and then they look for the connections based on what they teach. And that could be, I mean, it works great in a social studies or a history class, right? Those connections are there naturally. And of course, that's where Sarah and I saw a lot of connections because we're history teachers. But we had so many teachers come to our workshop that were not history teachers. We had English language arts teachers, we had math teachers, we had science teachers, and they saw connections to their content as well. One of our favorite lessons was something that Sarah and I never would have come up with on our own. But this was an elementary school math teacher who was teaching her kids about coordinate graphing. She had to, teach lessons on coordinate graphing, and she came up with after our week-long workshop, and she had learned all these concepts, about archaeology. She came up with a lesson that was a backwards dig. And her backwards dig lesson was that she laid a grid out on the classroom floor, and she gave the kids a bunch of artifacts, and she gave them coordinates on which to place each of those artifacts. So the kids were placing the artifacts onto the grid based on the coordinates that she gave them. So they're practicing those coordinate graphing skills. And then once they placed all the artifacts, then they had to interpret the site and tell the story of what was there. And so she was able to do this without ever breaking ground. Like, she didn't have to go out and do a dig in the schoolyard, right? We won't want to encourage that. But she was ingenious. And Sarah and I never would have seen that, because that's not what we teach. We, and both of us, math is not our favorite. So it's those kinds of connections that teachers can see if you invite them in to spaces and let them learn the archaeology. They will see those connections naturally, and they will go, I know where I can use that. I know how I can bring that into my classroom. And so really adopt a teacher. Connect with your local teachers, and they will figure out ways to bring archaeology in.
Yeah, and it saves you the trouble of having to go to your principal or school board saying, "Hey, I'd like to dig a hole like
Yeah,
outside, not like a super
yeah,
huge
we
one,
don't want to
but
do that.
we will be borderline destroying, if not actually destroying, school property. So where do we land on this?" And they're like, hard pass.
No, thank
Yeah.
you.
Not only will the principal say absolutely not, don't even finish your question, but as well as I do, probably more, that is not ethical, and that's not how we teach archaeology. We don't just open up random spaces, and we teach the teachers that, right? Like, we teach them the ethics of how to teach archaeology and how to learn about it, and that it is a destructive science. And we have to be thoughtful about ensuring that items remain in the ground for future archaeologists. So I promise you, we do cover that intentionally. We
No,
are
but
led
I'm
by
just
one with
picturing
a
like
PhD.
I'm just picturing like school administrators with the vein throbbing in their forehead saying that you want to
Uh-huh.
dig up part of the school, and I'm sure that conversation is fine.
We do not encourage that in our workshops. But we have had some incredible lessons, and they are publicly available. They are found on the Maryland Historic Trust website. So they are free for use. Anybody can utilize them. We like to highlight and promote the teacher-created resources. Teaching resources right now, as in like what you put in front of a student, what you use to teach a lesson, it's difficult to come by really good ones that fit the needs of your classroom. So these are lessons that are intentionally created by professional educators, that teach the concept of archaeology, but not just like Julia said, not just in a social studies classroom, in a multidisciplinary classroom, because that to me is the selling point of archaeology. It can apply to absolutely any subject area. Right now, education, it feels, for me at least, very siloed in our content areas. There's not a whole lot of interdisciplinary approach, but I'm hopeful that that trend will shift, and archaeology is a perfect segue between all of the different disciplines in education.
And I think this goes back to what people perceive archaeology to be. They don't realize how much math and paperwork actually goes along with it. So, like for every day, like this is a rule of thumb that I've had professors tell me: for every like day you spend out in the field, you spend 3 in the lab or in the library just writing, researching, and doing math that I know no one else will ever see.
Yeah, and that's not something that you think about if you're just introduced to archaeology as, I'm going to say it, I'm sorry, but as Indiana Jones. Like, if that's your only reference, you're never going to understand the complex research before and after that is done to interpret, understand, and preserve the site. It is a misunderstood career.
I like to think so, and that's one of the reasons I do this show, and also just so people will keep hiring archaeologists.
Yes, we need more of them,
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah. So we have about 10 minutes left or so. I like to wrap up every episode with a career advice kind of question, but since you guys are actually in the classrooms with the students, actually teaching them archaeology, what advice would you give to people who are looking for ways to try to get archaeology in the classroom?
Connect with your teachers, right? Like find, I mean, I said adopt a teacher earlier, and I think that's really the best approach is connecting with your local educators, inviting your local educators into your space, teaching them about archaeology, and then asking them how they might bring that into their classroom and what they might need from you in order to bring that into their classroom. Um, a lot of really well-meaning people try to create a bunch of resources and then give them to teachers and say, here, you can do this in your classroom. And it doesn't always land the way that it's intended to, because the people creating the resources either aren't familiar with the state standards or they're not familiar with the levels of the kids, and what the kids can and can't do, what's going to be confusing or not confusing. They're not usually not trained educators. They mean well, they're trying to create something useful, but it doesn't always, it often creates more work for the teacher who looks at it and says, now I've got to make a bunch of modifications to it to be able to use it in my classroom. So the best way that we found is actually letting the teachers find those connections, and letting the teachers into bringing those teachers into your spaces and helping them learn.
Yeah, and that's something that I wholeheartedly recommend is like a showing and a telling. Like if you're just doing the telling part, you're only giving them half of the story. Like you want to actively invite teachers into the space, let them get their hands dirty. My weird thing is to connect teachers with a space when I take them out to like a site. I ask them to take off their shoes and actually feel the ground under their feet. I'm like, this is like how you connect to a space. Like you are physically connected to the space now.
I
I
love
love
that.
that, Jinx.
Yeah, it's less fun when it's been raining for 3 days.
That's true, but that sounds refreshing. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think a lot of cities are like this, especially big growing cities. They don't have as much green space as they used to, and people need like that connection to like the original environment of their city, like just to get outside of the stop and go traffic, the noise. You'll probably lose cell reception. That's kind of a double-edged sword. So you don't have to read per my last email while you're out in the woods. That's a wonderful feeling. But yeah, go out and actually make that connection with the environment. And I think that, like, when you see the look on somebody's face when they actually get it, it's like the most rewarding thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
for
like what
sure.
Julia said about like leaning into trusting the teachers. Much like archaeology is a misunderstood career path, and science, I would say teaching is as well. We because we're so common and because so many people have gone through the public education system, um, many people make the erroneous assumption that they know how public education works, right? Because we've all been through it. But what you remember as a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 15-year-old is absolutely not at all in line with our actual day-to-day practice. How you perceive public education as an adult and a professional is not at all what you experienced as a kid because your lens is different. And so opening up connections, to teachers, inviting them in and trying to get to understand their constraints, is a wonderful practice for professional archaeologists if they want to bring their study into the classroom, making those connections, but remembering that their their memories of education have completely, well, their memories are the same, but the practice is very different today. We have testing that runs pretty much everything. We have budget constraints, we have safety concerns, we have technology that we didn't have before. So the world of public education looks very different from the time when you and I were in school. So when you adopt your teacher, lean into that. Lean into that curiosity as much as you want them to adopt what the science of archaeology is teaching. Lean into the curiosity about the changes in public education to better understand the environment and the constraints and the opportunities that we have as public educators.
Yeah, that's something Julie and I were actually talking about before the episode started. I gave a presentation in a classroom last year, and I had never actually used a smart board before. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how teachers survived without this. I love this, and I want everything. I want to get one of these for my house and just hang it up on the wall. Like, I don't care how much space it takes up, but I want this on one of the walls in my house.
I support this initiative. We
Yeah.
should start like a fundraiser.
Smart boards for all.
I love the
Oh,
split.
oh, that's going to be so expensive.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's okay. We can crowdfund it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Great.
Oh, but it gave me like not necessarily trauma flashbacks, but having to write things on the board in front of other people when I can't just like now I can just pull up my PowerPoint presentation that I rehearsed in front of other people, and I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about spelling something incorrectly.
Yeah, it's there's a lot you, like Sarah said, there's a lot you do and process and handle as a teacher that the students have no idea, and that's the intention, right? Like it's with anything, the person who's running the behind the scenes logistics, right? You shouldn't see what the stage manager is doing behind the curtain, right? As they're doing their job, everything looks seamless and you don't even notice that they're there. It's sort of the same idea with teaching is that if you're doing your job, everything is seamless and the students don't notice really how much you're doing in the background to prepare.
Yeah, and that's something that, it didn't actually hit me until I started making presentations on a regular basis. How much work actually goes into making educational materials. Like, I did an
Mhm.
episode of this program that was an hour and a half long once, and I was like, oh, this is like what prepping for a college level course is. And I was brain dead for like 3 days after that.
Yeah, we do that 5 days a week. Sometimes more than that if you're an elementary school teacher or multiple preps. Yeah, that's it's hard. It's very hard to keep up the pace that the children need in order to progress in their comprehension. It is a tough job. But it's a job that teachers know well. And so if you want to get archaeology or you want the profession of historical preservation in any sort, if you want that in the classroom, connect with those teachers. And we can facilitate that. We can help. We know both worlds, like Julia said. We understand enough about archaeology and that career path because of our connections with the Maryland Historical Trust and the Archaeological Society of Maryland and all the different universities that we work with throughout the state. And then we also clearly know the education world very well because it's been all that we could breathe for the last 15 years. So we can help facilitate those connections if you're just like, I don't even know where to start. We got you.
So, the lie that I was told is that teachers get summers off. I know that's not true now.
No. Uh, I mean, yeah, we get summers off, but oftentimes teachers are using that to deepen their practice. They're using that to take the professional development courses that they need to renew their certifications. They are if they're big nerds like we are and they're really interested in their content, they're actively seeking experiences that are going to make their teaching richer and more exciting for their kids. And that's kind of what we love doing, is creating those experiences for teachers who are looking for it. Workshops and programs that can connect teachers with their local history, whether that's through a specific site, like a park or a museum or a historic house. where we would work with the staff there to create a workshop that brings teachers in and teaches them about the space with the intention of maybe bringing kids there on a field trip or infusing the content into their classroom, or just something that's, archaeology in general, that's connected to some sort of excavation, bringing teachers in, letting them have that experience. It can work great in conjunction with like a field school. And it's a really neat way to connect educators and professional archaeologists, in a way that's more natural, and authentic.
I like to think of it as the summer shift, right? So I might not be doing my everyday classroom job in the summer, but I'm still working. And that might just be my nature and my personality, but I feel like a lot of teachers align with that concept. We take some time to rest, of course, but Julia and I spend our summers doing building workshops, leading student tours abroad, writing textbooks, Lord, and leading professional development. And I feel like a lot of teachers have similar summers so that where they're following their passion, and education is our passion. We do love teaching, and we like to deepen our practice when we are not in front of the kids and in the classroom.
And that is the whole reason to get into education archaeology. Is it is our passion. We are it's not always the healthiest of relationships, but it is a very rewarding relationship. Like, people say that when you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. It's kind of a double-edged joke that I haven't worked in 6 years,
Oh, I love that.
That's awesome.
but it also makes it sound like I've been unemployed for 6 years. So I try not to tell people that.
Yep. Got to read the room on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me that I need to shave on a regular basis so that I don't look homeless. Well, that is about all the time we have today. Y'all, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a really great episode. I've had a lot of fun with this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. This is a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been really great.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.